No gags, no gimmicks, serious reviews on serious speakers. That's what you get on my channel. Today, I've got the Xtreme 3, one of the more premium in terms of price, boombox type speakers. I say boombox, when I say boombox, I mean prominent mid-end, over and above what you'd get, you know, if it was playing a natural flat frequency response. And where that is, you know, it's in your face. It's clearly, you're going out, you're going to get a thump, thump, thump. It's a boombox rather than something you're going to sit and listen to and analyze all the little nuances in the tracks. So I'm saying premium, although I have to say SBC codec, premium price, 280 quid. Apparently not even out in most of the places in the world. That never normally happens to me. Managed to pick one up on eBay. Apparently one of the few that you can pick up. So yeah, I'm ahead of the curve for once when it comes to my speakers. Gonna put it up against the W King D8. Now, I would have done this anyway, but it is a comparison that you've been asking about, because this has been called the Boombox Budget Champion. By who? Well, by me, because I think it's incredible value. Don't get carried away. I'm not saying it's the greatest speaker of all time. Pound for pound world champion remains for me Soundcore Motion Plus, but this is £70. That's £280. And throughout this comparison, that's what you've got to remember. 70 quid, 280 quid. £70, it's a boombox. And I'm saying you're going to get a thump, 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 and if that's what you want, which can be a lot of fun, or it can really annoy your neighbours. But it's a boom box, first and foremost. So what else have we got? What we haven't got, and this is, this was a shocker. We've got no LED lights. We've got no Sony style lights that flash up. I can turn this on. I've got no lights. I can turn this on. I've got no lights. What I do have is a brand new, lovely, lovely, lovely JBL logo. And when you angle it to the side, it lights up in like a rusty type of red. And you'll be doing that for hours. It's a lot of fun. What else have you got? Well, let's have a look at a proper comparison. I said £70, £280. Now, this isn't a new speaker. This came out in 2018. Just come out in 2020. I say it's come out. A lot of you saying, when am I going to get it? 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 I don't know. I didn't even know I was one of the first ones to get it, which is amazing. So that's an old one. That's a new one. In terms of batteries, we now know, because it was a bit of a mystery to me what was going on, because the specs weren't in the actual pamphlet type thing that JBL always give you. But apparently, if you want to know what the battery capacity is, it's under the lid. It's written around there, and if you've got amazing, amazing eyes, or do what I did, take a picture of it and blow it up, it'll tell you what the battery is. So what we have are 7.4 volts, 4,000 milliamps. Somebody said to me, well, it was supposed to be double. Good to remember. You can put batteries in series, you can put them in parallel. You can either have more capacity or you can have more power. So officially rated 7.4 volts, 4,000 milliamps, 7.26 volts, 5,000 milliamp hours. But I think from now on, probably going to be easiest for everybody if we do it in watt hours, because then it's converted from whether it's 7.4 volts or whether it's 3.7 volts. We know when we are. So 29.6 watt hours, 36.3 watt hours. They are both SBC codec, Bluetooth 5.1, Bluetooth 5. Both can be paired as stereo, both USB-C. But interestingly, both USB-C, but apparently now we've got two-way USB-C. So we've got, you can use this as a power bank, and we've got the full-size USB port right there. But the USB is not just for charging. It actually goes two ways. So if you've got USB-C to USB-C, you can actually use that to charge another device. They do both have auxiliary input. Big deal these days. I did mention I did test auxiliary. I don't normally test auxiliary because you expect them to have no lag. But I did test it for lag in the Xtreme 3 because a lot of people are interested in that for DJing. I got no lag on my auxiliary input. In terms of Bluetooth latency lag, neither of them are brilliant. But average 100 milliseconds on the W King D8, 140. JBL never really never got their act together really in terms of Bluetooth latency. And in terms of Bluetooth latency, yeah, the budget boombox wins that contest. Don't drop this in water. It's IPX5, but we got IP67, so not just waterproof 1 meter, 30 minutes, but dust proof as well. That 6 means dust proof. So not dust proof, can't drop it in water. It's IPX5, that just a little bit of water. Be very careful. Both have tweeters, big deal. Woofers, pair of woofers and a pair of tweeters on both of them, and of course passive radiators on both sides. I did test both of these for maximum battery life. I got basically the same. Well, 4 hours 12 minutes I got out the W King D8, 3 hours 50 minutes. But it's not, you know, it's not all bells and whistles, because you've got to remember, how loud is it going? So when I get to my maximum volume test, you'll see what we're talking about. So yeah, it's all, you could say, like Sony do, 24 hours, you know, maximum battery life. I'm not saying they literally say that, but kind of. But of course, at what volume? If you reduce your volume, then it doesn't really mean anything. Or if you didn't go that loud in the first place, well, you can't really compare them that way. We do have the potential of 60 watt charging on the JBL Extreme 3. It does come with an all singing, all dancing charger, but it's got USB-C. So you don't have to use that charger. But if you want to get the full ability to charge it, on paper, 20 volts, 3 amps, 60 watts. Is me personally, never gone over 30 watts while recharging it from flat. 2 kilos. We now have neodymium magnets, which are, well, thank you everybody who's told me. We did have ferrite magnets. It's now half a kilo lighter than the Extreme 2 because they've upgraded the magnets on the drivers to neodymium magnets, whereas, so we're talking 2.5 kilos for the W King D8, 2 kilos. It's noticeably, sort of, yeah, I would say noticeably lighter on the Extreme 3. It's a surprise to me every time I pick up the Extreme 3. I'm expecting a extreme weight, and it's not happening. It's surprisingly light for what you get out of it. Both 50 watt speakers, 50 watt, but hang on. JBL, it's 50 watts if you plug it in. It's not 50 watts. I don't know what the equivalent rating would be, but you'll see when I get to maximum volume. You can make your own guesses of what on battery the output is. But 50 watts if you plug it in, or just leave it on batteries. 50 watt speaker right there. Now, first thing I'm going to do is take a quick look at the frequency responses. As I try to put over all the time. It's for fun only, because these all have real-time digital processing. Makes a bit of a mockery of frequency response charts. Not totally, so it's a guide, but it's a guide only. I prefer looking at the actual tracks in the real world to see what the frequency response is. But anyway, quick comparison.
JBL Extreme 3, 80% volume, you hit the bass limit. After 80%, the volume goes up because highs and the mids are going up, but bass remains the same. So what was the bass heavy sound, 30, 40, 60%, starts flattening out 80, 90, 100% by 100%, mids high dominant. The bass hasn't gone, it's still there. It's just relatively less compared to the rest of the frequency response. The D8 in default mode, far more linear all the way up, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100%. The bass does go up with each volume increase, but it flattens out. So it's very bass heavy. The lower down the scale, almost too much by looking at that 20%. After about 60%, you could say it looks more balanced. So a bit different to the Extreme 3, which doesn't have so much bass adjustment at lower volumes, I think because it's already got a big bass, whereas there's a huge adjustment at lower volumes for the D8 in default mode. What about, it's got an EQ mode. Well, you hit EQ mode, it automatically goes louder. As you can see, not much difference in the frequency response, except that it's more V-shaped in EQ mode. It's got a bit more of this high-end lift. It's got a bit less of the mids, making it more V-shaped. But as you can see, it goes louder. This is the main thing you get with EQ mode. So Extreme 3, D8 looking about neck and neck in terms of overall volume, but the EQ mode looking like it may just go a bit louder. Remember, Extreme 3 here, this is on a battery.
So those are the things to note. That will go louder if you put the mains plug in, if you pair it off the mains. That goes louder if you hit the EQ button. When I say EQ mode, what do I mean? You got this button here. It's got, I don't know, 3 lines, whatever it's supposed to be. I don't know, but 3 lines on that last button. You hit it, I think, like 3 times, boom, boom, boom. And then you should see your blue LED flashing, and that means you're now in EQ mode. The minute you go into EQ mode, it goes considerably louder. You lose a bit in the mids, you gain a bit in the highs, but it becomes sounding bass heavy. People say, well, you get more bass that way. Yeah, well, it sounds that way because it's reducing everything relative to the bass. So it's really to go louder. I wouldn't personally use it until I want to go, oh, I want a bit louder, because I'm at maximum volume already, and then I hit that button. What we really need to know is, what do they actually sound like? So I'm going to do sort of a low volume test. I'm calling it low volume. It's 50%. Now, what that actually means in the real world is 53% on my JBL Extreme 3. Obviously, it plays quieter than that, but we've got a problem here because I want to compare it also to EQ mode. EQ mode is only 23%. When that's at 53%, EQ mode on this is 23%. So I can't really go much lower in volume. And then default mode on this will be 40% volume.
Why everybody say, now it's gone away, rocks now dead, nothing left to dance. No one gets today, we've got to face the truth, now it's far away. Tell me what you want, here's what you got. You've been every day more than we have ever seen. Rocks now dead, don't ask why. Since when the rock is now dead. Why everybody say, now it's gone away, rocks now dead, nothing left to dance. No one gets today, we've got to face the truth, now it's far away. Tell me what you want, here's what you got. You've been every day more than we have ever seen. Rocks now dead, don't ask why. I've got nothing to say. Don't care for the industry.
So D8 EQ mode versus D8 default mode. Obviously, EQ goes a lot louder. But the big difference is it's more bass heavy. So EQ mode, although it automatically goes louder, it sounds more bass heavy because it reduces the mids and the highs. When they're balanced, as you can see, at 50 Hertz, default mode actually has the most bass. And they're the same mid bass, upper bass. It's just that it's more bass heavy because the rest of the frequency response has been reduced in EQ mode. Because JBL Extreme, well, at these volumes, whether it's EQ mode or default mode, it's very muddy. It's not very clear. On the D8, it's very, 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 very bass heavy, and that becomes evident against something like the JBL Extreme 3, a fair dollop of clarity and high-end boost, especially 12.5 kilohertz. It's the only one that really digs genuinely deep into the bass, but in terms of that kind of midish bass, the bass peak here, 86 hertz, well, that's where the W King D8 does have the biggest slam by a fair margin, actually. And the upper bass, 170 hertz, well, the JBL Extreme 3 then has the bigger punch. So both deliver bass, but in a different way. But genuine deep bass only the Extreme 3 will give you.
First thing you're going to ask me, Al, did you put a towel over the W King D8 when you was recording it? No, it's so bass heavy at lower volumes that as soon as you A-B it, it sounds like it's got a towel over it because it's quite, you know, the clarity is so much more on the Extreme 3. It is a muddy listen at low volumes. Some people find that okay, but I have had a lot of people say, you know, you should mention it's not a great listen at low volumes because it's so bass heavy, it's too bass heavy. I mean, yeah, adjust it. The thing is, I know they have these, the Flecher Munson curve and all that sort of thing. And so they adjust the bass. The point being, it's not just the bass where you need a bit more oomph because of the sensitivity your ears changing. It's at the high end as well. So if you just have a massive boost in the bottom end, which would be fine if you was adjusting the high end at the same time, but they haven't. So it ends up being a bit of a mess. No real bass adjustments going on, as you saw from the frequency response on the JBL Extreme 3, but it's already got a 12 kilohertz. Actually, they both have a 12 kilohertz boost, but it's very prominent on the Extreme 3. So it's already making up at lower volumes for any loss of clarity by being bass heavy, but they haven't actually adjusted it. In fact, not only do they not adjust it, as you saw from the frequency response, they won't even give you any more bass after 80% volume. So a bit muddy, but yeah, the bass is there. For me, clearly, there's only, at these volumes, you'd only listen to one speaker. And we're seeing the difference between default mode and EQ mode. If you didn't actually play them at different volumes and you just went the same volume, hit the EQ button, as people do, and they say, "Oh, wow, got loads more bass, it's much louder." Well, no, it's just going, it goes louder. You know, obviously pushing the amp that much more, you know, and not as clean a sound. Anyway, the point being, 50% for me, it's got to be the JBL Extreme 3, but already we can see differences between these speakers. This is a budget boombox, and you are getting a boom. It's not like you're throwing your money away. You are getting a boom, but you're not getting the best of sounds. But there's an upper bass kick. You've got real, genuine, deep, extended bass on the JBL Extreme 3. So we're going to go louder. What I'm calling my 70% test. Well, that means EQ mode 56%, default mode is 76%, and we're at 73% on the JBL Extreme 3.
Until I lost what I thought I wanted. I never knew what I need till it went away. I never knew my strength till I had none left and I hit rock bottom. I never knew my strength till you went away. And I was falling, falling, hiding my eyes from falling, trying hard to break through. Thought there was no one like you, so I was afraid to lose you. I'm light
70%. It's the same as around a 50% test. EQ mode, obviously, much louder, but it's relatively bass heavy. It sounds more bass heavy because the rest of the frequency, the mids and the highs, have been reduced. 50 hertz, you actually got the bigger bass again on the D8 in default mode. Hitting that EQ button, it goes louder, but it reduces the mids and the highs, thereby sounding more bass heavy. It makes up for that a little bit because it does have a bit of a bigger peak at around the 12 kilohertz in EQ mode than default mode. JBL Extreme 3, again, if you want deep bass, it's only the Extreme 3, but the D8 does deliver in the upper bass, whether it's default or EQ mode. 3 dB up on the Extreme 3. But remember, that's a boost. It's not that Extreme 3 isn't producing it there. The D8 is boosted in the upper bass. By the time you've hit the 65 hertz peak on this track, you're 3 dB down in terms of proper deep bass, comparing D8 to the Extreme 3.
Yeah, 70%. It's different now. So as you go up the volume, the W King D8, it does flatten out. It becomes a reasonable listen. In fact, they're both fun to listen to at these volumes. They both have a big bass kick, but in different ways. Upper bass, lower bass, deeper bass, rumbly bass. But this is, you know, it will give you a good party, but you hear why it's budget. It's because there isn't a lot of finesse going on. You're getting more detail from the Extreme 3. You're getting more buzz and more fizz from the JBL Extreme 3. But you're certainly getting a fair wallop. You can't complain for 70 quid. For 70 quid, that's amazing value. For 280 quid, that's JBL value, and there is the difference. So 70%, well, you know, you could enjoy either of these speakers. You're not buying them to listen just at 70%, are you? You're going to go for a party, you're going to go, turn it up, turn it up, turn it up, 100% volume.
I strap in the mirror, feel my heart chained. With every single breath, I see it fade away. Trapped in the pieces as I fall apart. Light behind my shadow, baby, it's so hard. Talk to myself as I counterpart, saying you still deny it. Living with secrets that I cannot escape. Dazed and confused, so I stay away. Praying for a change with some kind of faith. Baby, you still deny it. Now I'm getting stronger, weaker than armor. Not losing this fight, yeah, I'll be alright, cause I'm the queen of my mind. Now I'm going harder, a name to remember. What's changing inside will make me deny that I'm the queen of my mind. Now I'm getting stronger, weaker than armor. Now I'm going harder, a name to remember that I'm the queen of my mind. Still trapped in the mirror, that's my way to change. Feeling lost within the days, I'll never be the same. And I'm speaking out my mind, even in married to anxiety. Dropping the pieces as I fall apart. Light behind my shadow, baby, it's so hard. Talk to myself as I counterpart, saying you still deny it. Living with secrets that I cannot escape. Dazed and confused, so I stay away. Praying for a change with some kind of faith. Baby, you still deny it. Now I'm getting stronger, weaker than armor. Not losing this fight, yeah, I'll be alright, cause I'm the queen of my mind. Now I'm going harder, and they do remember. What's changing inside will make me deny that I'm the queen of my mind. Now I'm getting stronger, weaker than armor. Now I'm going harder,
So they both have a little trick. The Extreme 3 goes louder if you plug the mains lead in, whereas the D8 goes louder if you hit the EQ button. It goes louder, but the flip side is it's noisier, it's not a clean sound, and you lose some body. But ultimately, it's loud. Decibel and a half in actual perceived terms over the Extreme 3, even with its main lead plugged in. And in terms of RMS, so actual power, not adjusting for perceived sound, it's 2 dB up on the Extreme 3. So it does go loud, no argument. But even though it goes louder, you still can't make up that deep bass. We are some 13 dB up at 60 Hz, 7 dB up at 50 Hz when the Extreme 3 is on mains mode compared to the EQ mode on the D8. But the D8 does have a big upper bass boost, 5 dB up at 170 Hz over the Extreme 3 in mains mode. It goes loud, but you may find it not a pleasant listen, the D8. In default mode, the D8 is still louder than Extreme 3 on battery. In terms of LUFS, yeah, exactly the same, but RMS, we're 1 dB up with the DB8 in its default mode. In terms of peak, that goes to the Extreme 3 on battery. We have the bigger slam by far on the D8. We're 4 dB up at 170 Hz, 3 dB up at 80 Hz, but then the Extreme 3 comes into its own. In terms of deep bass, 60 Hz, 50 Hz, 10 dB up at 60 Hz, 6 dB up at 50 Hz. So they both deliver bass, just in a different way. Ultimately, even if you plug the mains lead in to the JBL Extreme 3, it will not go as loud as the W King will go just in battery mode once you've hit EQ mode.
Blimey, but the W King D8, it goes loud. It's 50 watts, it's 50 watts. Yeah, that goes louder than the JBL Extreme does with the mains lead plugged in. Now, you may be thinking, oh, what's that all about? The thing to remember is, it still has a deeper, bigger bass, upper bass, but the deeper the bass, the more power it's going to take to drive. So more of that power, more of the amp is going to driving that low deep bass, which does outkick the W King D8 by a considerable margin. And you can actually hear 2 different types of bass going on. Your upper bass, which may be enough for you, or deep for me. That's the satisfying bass. That's the warm bass. That's movie type bass. You know, if you're actually going to listen to this with movies, if you don't need that Bluetooth latency isn't a big deal and you're going to use auxiliary input or something, that's more of a movie type speaker, isn't it? You've got the clarity and you've got the bass. Yes, it's the same bass we had at 80% volume, but hey ho, that is JBL for you. But plug the mains lead in. It's still a testament to W King D8. On battery, it's outperforming. Well, I say outperforming, and there's the other kicker. It goes louder, but that EQ mode, other than you're outside and you just want to go loud, and it really doesn't matter how good it sounds, and that will do you. But if it's to go loud and still be decent listen, well, it's full of distortion. It's not a great listen. It's a bit shrill. It's very hard. Not a lot of detail. It's just very loud. Clearly, you know, it's pushing the amp as far as it'll go. In default mode, it's a bit more of a listen, and in default mode, it's neck and neck with the JBL Extreme 3 on battery. Again, it's the big difference between upper bass and lower deep bass, and you're going to prefer one or the other. Ultimately, even though that doesn't produce more bass after 80%, that doesn't produce great detail, and for a lot of people, that's not going to be something you miss or you've ever wanted in a speaker. If you want something a bit more hi-fi credentials between the two, it can only be the JBL Extreme 3. I'm not saying it's a hi-fi speaker; it's still a boombox. There is a drop in the mids. There's still, but it's for me it's the first extreme speaker that I can use on a go-to basis daily, and be a lot of fun. But it's still overemphasizing the deep bass. But it's impressive it can go there. It's now fun rather than my ears and I'm tired. Oh, it's giving me a headache. First, usable. If you listen to anything other than the bass. This is quite hard. There isn't the fears. This is more open. The JBL Extreme 3 is clearly open. So there's a difference. This is great value at 70 quid. You cannot deny that. But it's a budget speaker at the end of the day. And I'm not saying it's better value than the Soundcore Motion Plus, because the Soundcore Motion Plus is all round. It can do anything. Okay, it's not going to be a boombox, but you can listen to it in all sorts of ways. Whereas you're going to listen to this as a boombox, I think, first and foremost, and almost nothing else. JBL Extreme 3, well, it's 280 quid for an SBC codec. It's clearly superior to the W King D8, unless you want it to go ultimately as loud as you can and you're not going to plug the lead, even with the mains lead plugged in. Then, again, W King D8 for you is your man. But 280 quid, It's more of a hi-fi speaker. There's, you know, there's more detail. It's more of a serious speaker. I'm not saying it's a hi-fi speaker in any, well, a little bit. It's a little bit hi-fi speaker, but it's still a party and fun speaker first and foremost. The problem with the JBL Extreme 3, the problem with the JBL Extreme 3, of course, is the price. If this was a £180 or even the same as the XP43, coming down to £200, maybe it will eventually. Then, you know, it's a bit of a no-brainer. It's a decent, you know, there's nothing quite like that in that size, as light as that, 2 kilos, goes as deep as that. Then I would say fair enough. 280 quid though, it's pushing the boat out. But JBL know it's got a big logo. They're going to sell. So they're a big company. They want to make money. But so there it is. You have to make your mind up what you prefer. Is it value for money? Do you need some sort of analytical listen? Then you're going to have to go for the Extreme 3, or is it simply just too much money? Would you prefer 2 W King D8s, separate them out in stereo, and it's still half the price of the JBL Extreme 3? Yeah, 2 W King D8s is half the price. So it's not easy. What are you going to do? I don't know. I hope you got something out of this particular comparison. I thank you for watching.